I am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
And so it is. Hello, Essence. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. Oh, it's good to be back with you after our break last week for the holiday. I'm really enjoying the opportunity to dive back in with you and share with you really what's been happening in my world, as always, and what I notice cycling through my clients and myself, my life. Seems to be a pervasive theme right now. And so we're going to dive into it. We're going to talk about this idea of gurus and mentors and coaches. And if you caught the show the week before Thanksgiving, we did this, we did talk about this idea of us being our own guru and being the general contractor, of creating our experience. And since that time for me, there has been a lot unfolding around that topic, some deepening into the awareness around it and some, not so really graceful pieces around it. I'm certainly having the opportunity to play with all of the edges and nuances, of what does, power and responsibility and who's in charge? Does anyone have to be in charge? What does all of that look like? And so today I just want to share with you, a few things, some stories of times when I gave my power away, when I had gurus and it didn't turn out so well. I want to share what's been happening with me recently with my own coaches and shamans and my experience in stepping into that role for so many women now in magic school and, just playing with what does this really mean for us on this path? Because I'm just going to rewind. So if you didn't hear the show last time, I shared that I had been in sacred ceremony, and one of the big themes from that session was this idea that, we are our own gurus. There is no one coming to save you, and as such, we are the general contractor of our own experience. So that means we're pulling in people who may have pieces for us, but we sit firmly in the driver's seat of that, right? So in a way, that's great. And, it's clear. And then there's all of this fuzziness that happens on the way to the forum. So let me see where I want to start. Yeah, I'm compelled to start with, let me just see. Yeah, there's some reason that this wants to be started with. So several years ago, I had a very painful experience. I've actually had a couple really painful experiences where I signed on with a guru, right? And so I'm going to discern these kind of three titles. So a guru to me is someone who positions themselves as a keeper of knowledge, as a conduit between divinity and you, as some kind of a translator between your ordinary experience and something greater, That's my working definition of it right now. And then, coaches tend to be more, I think right now, coaches are often more head-based. And so there's a lot of positive thinking and mindset work, and it's about doing and action. And so they're sort of your cheerleader. So they call you on your stuff. They push you in a direction that you say you want to go. So there is an empowerment piece to it. And often there's a lot of purpose to it, like goals and purpose. And then mentors, I feel, are more like people that walk with you, people who are on a similar path, and they have experiences that are like your own, but they're a few steps maybe ahead of you on the path you're wanting to follow. And so they sort of serve more of to me, it feels more like a mothering quality, or more like a sister quality, like a big sister, like they're just a little ahead of you and they love you and they're holding you in a certain way, showing you where, what's possible because they've also walked this path. So, those are my definitions. Certainly you can have your own, but just for the purposes of this discussion, that's kind of how I'm holding those three. And so back when I started when I started this path, particularly of moving out of the traditional world, out of the corporate world, and into, at that time, I was completely non-traditional. So what I stepped into first was law of attraction coaching. And it was largely about mindset. And because I was so masculine at the time, I was, of course, attracted to a guy. That's who I hung out with. I came from, a corporate job where I worked with nearly exclusively all older men. And so, of course, that's who I would pick to be my coach. And so this guy was definitely a guru. He positioned himself as that. He was extremely charismatic. He had a huge following. His father was also a very charismatic coach in a different field, but they were very well known. And, so I started, and immediately I was just enamored, I wanted to be him. I wanted to be around him. I wanted to learn everything he knew. I had this desire in me to, I had the prime directive already ticking, but I just didn't even know that's what it was. So I soaked up everything he did. And I spent a ton of money. I think at that time, which was about 12 years ago, it was maybe a $12,000 class right out of the chute, my first foray into this industry. And it was great. In a lot of ways, it was great. I had huge improvements. I, broke through a lot of things. I learned a lot. I started making money. I started a couple businesses. And it certainly wasn't perfect. And the piece that I want to talk about that was really painful for me was at the end. So I had gotten on a track to actually work for this guy, right? So I was just starting to move from student into, a track where I would take all these courses and then become a coach for him in his business. And right as I was about to do that, he imploded. Literally, he went into this huge existential crisis. He started being really mean to his people. My friend who got me into the track was part of his, was already a coach for him. And so, I had the inside scoop of what was happening to all of his people. He basically fired everyone and quit his company, and just left everyone high and dry, just kind of closed the doors. And it was very painful. And, in the process of all of that happening, he got really projection-y and it was everyone else's fault. And, and it was awful. It was really awful and disillusioning and all of that. So that happened, but I'm still my warrior self. So I continue on my path. I get trainings here and there. And, what I'm sharing with you here is really my arc of learning of what does it mean to be in power, and how do you be on this path where you get what you need if you aren't, if you don't know something, how can you work with a coach without giving them your power? So it's a hindsight look, right? This is 13 years ago that this happened. And 7 years later, I did almost the exact same thing with my energy coach, right? So it was somebody that I really respected. He was very charismatic. I, followed him around for a couple years, begging him to take me on as a student. He finally did create a program, and I signed on for the full gig. So at this time, $20,000, year long, very in depth. Almost to a T, like best student ever, showing up, exponentially more than required. Immediately started talking to him about wanting to work with him and for him. We had very similar messages out in the world. I already had a successful coaching practice, but I immediately thought he had something more than me, and I wanted that, I wanted the fast track. So, completely subconsciously, I had him on such a pedestal, right? Like, he's a better energy reader than me, and he's a better psychic than me, and he's got all this business, and he's already got this global purpose. And, and so instead of taking the route directly through myself exchanging with life, I latched on to taking his path of exchange with life, right? And there's all kinds of reasons why we do that, because, it felt scary. I didn't think I could do it myself. I'd been trying for 7 years. It was going so-so. Like, I had clients, but I wasn't making a ton of money, and it certainly wasn't doing the global scope that I knew that I was meant to do. And so, near the end of that year, things had been going beautifully. He was like the Messiah, literally, for me and most everyone else in his program. And he even was very good for a lot of that time of saying, like, I'm not going to take your power, you be in your power, and so that was beautiful, even though I never took my power back, right? I kept constantly trying to give it to him. And near the end of that program, he imploded, like for real imploded. And same, so except for now you've got this psychic who can see into people, and he, started being really inappropriate and using people's information against them, and really tore down his company and left all the people hanging who had been promised positions in his company. And it was like, okay, so of course, in my space of disempowerment, what I made of all of that is like, okay, there's no one who knows anything. No one can actually do this. There aren't any healthy people in this field. I'm completely the victim to this. I was doing everything right, blah, blah, blah. All of that. It took me about a year after that experience ended to dig through and process through the wounding of that, which I want to make sure you hear me. That experience was a reflection of wounding that was already there, right? So it did add a layer of pain to the pain that I already had under the surface. It can't replay like that for you unless you already have some match to it. It's not a coincidence that I attracted the exact same experience with two different gurus, right? So I remember in the process of digging out of all of that, because, I went through this whole thing of like, I'm not even going to use energy. Like all of those tools are tainted. I hate the whole thing. And as I was digging out of that, one of the best insights I got was how much I had put him on a pedestal, how much I expected that he knew all the things that I needed. And if I just did all the things like he did, then somehow I would be better or be complete or be something more than I was. And I remember that energy session where I saw that the way to avoid that is to not put people on a pedestal, not in a disillusioned way, but just in a oh, he's a human being who happens to have some skills that I would like to learn, and just because he makes more money than me or because he has a bigger list than me doesn't mean he is fundamentally better than me, And I think this is something I'm so curious about because, there's like there's hard wiring in us to do these things. There's hard wiring in us to want to be saved because we get in our fear, we get in our small selves, our ego self. We don't know how to get from where we are to where we want to go. And so rather than being in the pain of that indecision, lack of clarity, the giant question mark, we latch on to someone who seems certain. We latch on to something that looks like it will create a period or an exclamation point on our sentence. And this is incidentally what the online coaching industry is built around. It is built around the leveraging that dynamic in people so that coaches and gurus and even mentors for the most part position themselves as I've got it figured out. I'm all together. If you just pay for this course or just do this thing, you'll come out looking like me, right? And, I've talked about this on the show a lot, but it's tricky because even if you get that on a mental level, there's all this stuff happening in your subconscious that still might land you in that same piece, right? So we have to keep being more and more aware of what else is causing that to happen. So, back to the story of me. So I've had these two really glaring experiences of what can happen when you put someone on a pedestal and when you give your power away to them and you lose your own center or try to become a clone of someone else, And so, fast forward to what's currently occurring for me. So, I teach Essence. We're constantly clearing and excavating, and I feel more myself than I ever thought possible. Like I am very anchored in who I am and what I want. And it's still important to become coachable, right? To remain coachable because, there's this fine line of sometimes you can think you're an essence and it feels really certain, but it might actually be ego. And it can be really tricky to tell the difference. So it is important that you always have somebody that can reflect you, somebody trusted who can help you see into the shadowy places and help to look at the parts that may be out of alignment. And then it's like this tightrope walk between being coachable but also being centered. So let me tell you let me give you a few examples of what that might look like. So in the Magic School launch, which we are in the middle of, next week is our big week of actually offering these teleseminars to many thousands of people. It'll be in front of about 40,000 people next week. In the process of gearing up for that, I have made a 5-figure investment in a marketing firm, right, who has expertise in running Facebook ads and online marketing and creating funnels, all the stuff that I have no interest in learning or managing. So, it's a team of people. There are, let's say 5-ish people, 5 to 7 people that we're kind of working with throughout the project and the different pieces. And one of the things we talked about when we came in was, what makes something like this work? And so, one of the women on the team said, well, one of the things that makes it work is you having ownership of the project. So if you hand all the power to us, we've had clients who've done that in the past and they've been really disappointed with the results because, we can do certain things for you, but it has to be your energy under the project. And I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense, So I put my energy under the project. And what I started noticing is all the stuff I had paid the 5-figure investment to do, I was doing myself, right? So I was, not liking any of the emails that they were writing and I was rewriting all of them. And I was, instead of them managing the technology person, I was doing that. And so, I have these trusted people around me. So my husband and Viv were like, what are you doing? This is your pattern where you're like controlling everything and you're not really letting yourself be supported. And so it became this inquiry like, I want to be supported, and yet what I've created is something that's not actually a match for me outside. Like, really, the emails were bad. They were bad. Trust me, you're glad you didn't get them. And yet, both were true. I was not actually receiving the support I paid for. So there's something in my system that is unavailable to that support. And then also there was like, a lack of me being able to discern where to put myself in and where to let myself be vulnerable to the expertise and the support I had called in, And you may be experiencing this in your life too. And it's why we end up in these traps of, I want support, I don't have support. I want mentoring, but I don't learn the things. And so it's just a dynamic worth noting. On the flip side, right? So in that case, because you're like, well, how did it go? Well, what I discovered is like I had some deep blocks I needed to clear around my fear of vulnerability, my fear of allowing someone to show up in my space and do something better than me. And deeper than that was even this really interesting block around, I'm such an empath, right? And so I feel the energies of people not even around me. Like I feel the energies of all the people on the planet. And so the wider I open my container, which is exactly what these people are doing for me, the wider I open my container, the more it feels like an inundation, of the muddiness of the energy of all the people that would be even seeing the ads and not even coming into the funnel, but just all the people that are then experiencing that comes into my field. I just actually saw Laura Hollick posted today on Facebook something really similar. She said, I realized that I limit my receiving to only receive from people who have really clear energy, right? Which is what I do as well. It's what I have been doing. And so I had a beautiful energy clearing session on expanding to allow myself to be bigger, right? To be galactically big so that as these energies are coming through me, they're not landing in me, they're not getting stuck in me. And it's not a criticism of anyone who's coming into the field, right? This is my story. It's my belief that I can be contaminated by, energies coming in and, just the way that I've held that. So, yeah. And, so that happened. And then, simultaneously, there was also a moment in the experience with this marketing team where I was, everybody was doing their projects and, I's were getting dotted and T's were getting crossed. And there was, and I was just feeling really disturbed by the energy of it all, right? So the energy was very ungrounded. It was everyone disconnected from the actions they were taking. And, and so I was like, oh, I should just, it's their company. This is the way they operate. I should defer. But my inner guru said, no, the energy is off here. And this is not going to serve, right? The energy is off. I'm not allowing this. And so I called a team meeting, right? I stepped into my CEO hat of the project and of myself and said, we need to refocus our energies here. So let's have a meeting where we all get really reconnected to the purpose of what we're doing. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And right after that meeting, the copy that was written was spot on. We had, huge ahas. Everything started clicking again. So it is this play, right? Like there is no guideline that says this is always the way or this is always the way. And that's why it's tricky, because really the only thing we can return to is the inquiry of, is this in alignment? Is this in alignment? Am I in my essence right here? And we all have our different ways of tuning into where that certainty lives. I can tell you one of the things that makes it a lot easier is when you are up close and personal with your essence. So in my experience, it is mandatory that the first and most important thing you dedicate yourself to is excavating your essence. Like you cannot do that after you try to build your business or after you've spent $20,000 on marketing and website and, failing your launches. Like you cannot do that stuff before this. because I promise you the 5-figure investment I made with this company would have been money down the drain if I was not able to hold the space that I hold. And it's not because the marketing company isn't competent and capable. It's because they are an extension of me. So I am the general contractor of this is what piece needs to happen for me now. And here's the tool I need to have that occur, right? Because, this is where so this is an example of how we give away our power. Everybody's looking for the blueprint, right? So like, oh, here's a woman who's making 6 figures. Let me listen to her story. And then I will replicate her story by hiring the same coaches, by going through the same motions, by, having headshots that look like her. And then we get to the end and it's like, wait, how come 2 people showed up? Right? I did all the things. Maybe there's something wrong with me. The problem is what's wrong with you is you're not actually being you. I want to give you another example. So I've talked about this before. I'm in a program right now. We paid for it at the beginning of the year to learn how to do a telesummit, right? So I kept getting a yes in the energy, right? Getting a yes, like, this needs to happen. And from the minute I got in there, I was like, this is not really the vibration that I would want to be in. This is not my group. I'm not really sure why I'm here. But there was enough nuts and bolts in there that birthed Woman Come Undone, right? So I didn't do it the way that they do it, but there was just enough structure and just enough pieces in there that allowed me to create my own version of something that was my fingerprint that ended up being a beautiful amount of content, right? There are many people who paid the same tuition who are having no results or horrible results, right? Because they're so far from being ready to be that visible, to hold that kind of space, to even know what their message is, to be able to manage rejection in their system. I mean, like, you name it, that's all happening, So it's not that there's magic in the program. The magic in anything is fueled by you, right? You are the magic. Tweetable, you are the magic, right? Like, literally, you are the animating force behind anything you bring into your space. And you may have heard me say this before, but the same is true with my marketing. I have a pretty amazing website, and often I'm asked, who took your pictures? Who created the website, And so initially we would just give those names, and then we had several people who used those vendors and did not have a similar result, right? And then they were unhappy with us or they were unhappy with the vendor. And, so now we've started, when we're asked, we give this whole caveat, which is there's no magic in the vendors. They are amazing, right? Heather Brand did my photos. She's fantastic. Vanetta Taylor did my website. She is an amazing shaman. She's totally magic. And neither of them can save you from yourself. So if you have a giant question mark about who you are or where you're going or what your message is, no amount of money will fill that hole, right? And so why it worked for me is because I knew who I was. So I pulled in the right photographer at the right moment to do the thing that was being called forward. I had no plans to even make a website, but then the pictures looked so good that it was like, great, I wonder who could make this into something really magical. Oh, enter stage left Vanetta, right? Who I didn't even know did web pages. So this is what I mean by these sneaky little ways that our ego tries to find something to grasp onto. I have these feelings of wildness in me, and so I need to become Jody, or I need to become Gina DeVee, or, I want to live a wealthy lifestyle, so I'm going to do, high dollar intensive weekends like Gina DeVee. But it's not about that, right? Gina DeVee does that because she's in touch with who she is, and she's putting her own fingerprint on that, and that's why she's making millions of dollars at it, So you might be able to successfully pay her tuition and use that to fill a gap that you already have in your knowing, right, of your ability. But again, Viv and I were just joking the other day. This is not from a place of ego, but it's because it's like every time I pay someone to, provide a service, I always end up being like their best client. And the reason is because knowing who you are makes every process better, So it's not that there's something extra special about me. It's just that the magic of my essence comes through and animates every other thing that I do, so that it all becomes like alchemically aligned. And then, magic happens. Magic happens. So that said, let's talk about some places where it hasn't been super smooth. So as I'm navigating this place with my, new marketing team, and, sometimes I'm noticing I'm needing to clear, and sometimes I'm stepping into the driver's seat, there becomes this larger question, right? This larger question where I was still having these echoes in my system of, I'm kind of pissed that I have to do this all alone, so this is my great mother abandonment, and still not quite placing like there was still part of me that really wants a guru. Like, I really do want someone who can save me. I want someone to show up and say, here, honey, here's all the things you've been missing. And if you just do this, you've got it. Right. And, so I was, so that was echoing through my system, and it was having me hold on to, for me, the pattern looks like I hire support, or I hire someone to do something for me. And then, I start to get flooded with energy, either theirs or what they're hooking me up to. And then I start making them wrong because they're not doing it right. And then I have to do it all myself, right? I catalyze them to their next level of growth. And then there's some level of ingratitude from them, right? So if you're following that conversation we've been having about energetic exchange, what that has looked like in my system is, I position myself to always be the one with the energy going out, right? So I'm the top of the ladder, and I have to be knowing everything and doing everything in order to feel safe. And so even when I've paid a lot of money for some group or person to support me, there's a way that I subconsciously poke holes in it so that I end up not actually receiving what I desired, right? So I was like, okay, I'm sick of that pattern. It's happened to me 7 or 8 times over the last few years, on a big scale. And it's like, I'm also really clear I can't expand into this next level of personal essence expression, and therefore untamed you company expression, right? Unless I heal this. And so now we go a level deeper. So I had these beautiful sessions. I had a series of interactions and sessions with my shaman. I had a session with the woman who coaches me. And I trust both of them immensely. And normally they provide me with a lot of direction, right? A lot of direction, and a lot of direction's not the right word. A lot of clarity, right? And insight. And they're very much in the mode that I'm in, which is, find your own truth, find your own essence, all of that. And yet, in these current sessions, I felt like they were off. I felt like they were off, and their read of it was, it's your ego, right? It's your ego. You're so trapped in your ego, you're not seeing this. And I was like, maybe that's true. And so an example was like, my one coach was saying, you need to surrender more to the divine. You need to let go. You need to merge with the divine and let the divine lead you. And it's not about what you want. It's about surrendering to the divine will and melting into oneness. And I was like, that's not how it feels in my system. So I do need more of that. I need more partnership with the divine. And there's something important about me being an individual. There's something important about me being separate, and my will does play into this. And I can feel how there's part of my purpose that's about this discernment of power and divinity and separation. And, I haven't had all these lifetimes where I've wielded power and been the victim of extreme power and, all of that gamut to come here only to say that power is not a thing, And so I'm curious, I'm curious about what that looks like. And, and it was distressing me because I normally can find so much clarity with them, but it was feeling off. And then I was like, am I off? Are they off? Like, who's right and who's wrong? And am I just not coachable, or can no one help me? Right? Like, that's how it was landing in my system. Either I'm broken or they're broken and I'm alone, Isn't it cute? Isn't it so cute how we do these things? So just notice, right? If you've had interactions in your experiences so far where you've, hit these stuck places of like, why can't anyone figure this out? What often happens is then we start throwing out more grappling hooks, grappling hooks as in like, who else can save me? So that particular night after a couple sessions, I got in a fight with my husband for not supporting me and, managing the kids and cooking dinner. And, I got pissed at my internal support that, they were letting me down. And I mean, it was a whole rant, right? Like, it's everyone else. And like, who can save me? And everything I would touch, would just sort of tank. And so, we're cute like that. Like, when we get threatened or sticky, again, we just subconsciously start throwing out like, it's the program, it's the, it's the money, it's my job, it's my kids, it's my husband. Like, it's somebody else's fault that this isn't happening. So, after my rant and my outward projection, the one day, I actually had a really big breakthrough. And so for some reason, I want to tell you about my dream here. So kind of backing up, another beautiful thing that happened as I was in this space of like, there are no mentors for me, right? Like, maybe I just am on the edge of this paradigm by myself and there really isn't anyone coming to save me. Maybe I am the only one who doesn't get a mentor. And I ended up having a series of dreams, which were phenomenal. So the first dream I had was this really beautiful, I was at a journey, a sacred ceremony in Bali, where I've never been. And there were all these women there, and I was just like enamored with how cool the women were and how up-leveled they were. And there was this one female shaman there who was old, and she was very wise, and she had these icy blue eyes. And she kept holding me with this really loving gaze, this really loving gaze. And so she didn't really tell me anything. She didn't coach me. She didn't give me information, but I like knew she had something for me. And I've always been an avid dreamer. Like, I dream every night. I go all kinds of places in my dreams. Like, it's a huge part of my healing and my awareness. So I woke up the next morning and I had this aha, which I'm sure she transmitted to me in her gaze. And the aha was that despite all these years of being, such an avid dreamer, lucid dreamer, all of that, there was a way that I would do that from a place of control. So just like my life, I would be kind of sitting outside the thing. So I would be judging like, oh, this is just a dream. And so I can change it if I want, or I can, fix it or do it, or, but I would like relegate it to something less than real because it was a dream. And what I got is that I could let go of that construct and actually join the dream as if it's real, and it could become something else. So the next night when I went to sleep, I actually set the intention tonight. I intend that whatever happens, I surrender to it. I allow it to be real. I allow it to be all that it wants to become. So I get into the dream and I find myself in this healing place, and the woman who was showing me around took me into the space of this male shaman, red-haired male shaman. He was huge. He was like 6'4". He had hair parted on the side with kind of like a red, swoop on the side. And there were all these things in this space like that I knew were healing objects. And I knew this was a space where real healing happened, but I didn't understand any of it. I'd never seen any of it before. So I'm having a conversation with a shaman, and he's teaching me about reverse aging. He's showing me images in my head. And it was the most real experience I have ever had. And then I looked down, and I've had knee surgery on my right knee. And my scar on my right knee was bleeding. And I was like, oh, look at that. My scar is bleeding. That's kind of weird. And he goes, oh, we need to do surgery on it. And immediately he like cuts open my knee with his finger. And I was like, wait, are we going to talk about this? Because there's no anesthetic and, and so he's just moving. It's like psychic surgery. So he's moving energy out of my knee and he's talking to me, and it was, it was beautiful and amazing. And he was moving all kinds of stuff about pride and ego and control. And it was just awesome. And so the dream continued, and we ended up exchanging medicine with each other, and I was helping him with some things. And so the whole night I would like come back and visit him, and he would teach me something and I would teach him something. And it was beautiful, right? So when I woke up that morning, I had this awareness of like, not all of my mentors may come from here, So as we move into this new paradigm, there's all kinds of ways that we can be supported, and it may or may not be directly from this physical realm, and I believe that our souls are really calling for that, and I can certainly feel our spiritual teachers and our teams anxiously awaiting for us to open ourselves to their guidance, because there is a lot being downloaded and inserted into this dimension right now, and you can become a conduit to it if you want to. So all of that said, that magic was happening, the couple days prior to this, blow up that I was having, and then this feeling of existential angst of like I have exhausted all of my internal team, hired and friends, like everyone I typically go to. And I'm still in this place of no one has helped me figure this out yet. And so I was kind of just feeling this existential angst around it. And, but I had gotten, I had these dreams. And so I was really attached to like, yeah, well, okay, universe. So what do you have for me? So I'm literally sitting at my desk, in my funk, and I had so much work to do. And I get a text from one of my friends that I had been, needing to connect with, but we kept missing each other, and she's asked me if I'm available, and so I don't answer because I got to do my work. And then she calls me and she leaves me a voicemail, and I'm like, okay, I don't have time to talk to her right now. I got to do this work. But like literally I couldn't even look at my screen because my attention kept going to the phone. It was almost like the phone was trying to like pick itself up and put it in my hand. And so I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to call her. And so I did. And the minute I heard her voice, I knew that was the medicine. And, and she says like, I was just really feeling you. What do you need, my love? And I was like, well, I was just sitting here thinking about how I'm not supported and no one gets me. And then you call and you totally love me and you immediately get me. And we had this beautiful conversation that was not at all like coachy, like she wasn't actually telling me anything other than I know you and you know you, right? And she and I have some beautiful similarities that I don't share with anyone else. And it really just helped to center me. That's what it was. It was like I could feel myself again. So it's like what I'm noticing is that I stay in the inquiry, I survey the field, I allow myself to take in information and to become permeable. And then at a certain point, there's a place where you have to balance and close, right? You have to be with what you have. And so as I did that, it was like, yeah, actually, I know, like I can see these pieces of truth that I've gotten from these beautiful advisors that I have called in. And there's a place in me that knows better, right? And knows better, not as in they're wrong, but knows what to do with all the pieces. And when that happened, it was like instant peace in my system. Instant peace. It was like, oh my goddess, here I am, and I stopped trying to figure anything out, and I just arrived. I just arrived in myself, So often when we're trying to figure it out, we're up in the head, and that's where a lot of the grappling hooks come out of, is, us searching for a way to survive ourselves and, to find somebody who can rescue us. And we can be very convincing in our SOS calls to our friends and our coaches and our allies, and actually it doesn't serve any of us when we're in that space, because, as long as I'm in that space, I can't call a team meeting, with my marketing team and say, hey, let's fix the energy here. And I can't show up peacefully loving my husband, and his support of me. And, and I can't really do anything. I can't actually expand into the world if I'm trying to be someone else's version of me, So what I would like to invite us into is just a moment to close your eyes and arrive in yourself, right? Arrive in yourself and imagine that you can cast off any of the ropes that are mooring you to something other than yourself, right? Even the ones that are mooring you to me right now, like, oh, that's really wise. I've never heard anyone speak like that. Like this Jody England, following her, Here's what you're going to discover. We can still travel together, even with you unattached from me, but we will do it better and from a space that catapults you further on your path when you aren't actually moored to me, when you show up as a full individual in and of yourself, right? So let's just practice for a moment. See if you can go ahead and pull your thighs in. And you can do this with so much love, right? Because you'll feel the fear in them. There's a reason they're out there, because you feel like you might drown without them holding you up. Or you feel like you might be alone and you don't know anything. And so why would you do that? Right? So just with each one, just say like, thank you for doing that. And it's just an experiment. So if after you try it on, you hate it, you can put them all back out. But I just want you to have the experience of what it is like to arrive fully in yourself. Yeah, and as you pull the next ones in, imagine adding a beautiful caress or hug of forgiveness. Forgiveness for yourself for doing that. Of course you were doing that. Your subconscious thought you were going to die. So it threw out a lifesaver for you, So I don't blame myself for, what was created those times when I gave my power to the gurus. And, I don't blame myself for getting scared here on the threshold of this gigantic expansion and getting a little pissy with myself and my team. Of course that's going to happen. And I'm grateful to have hired highly discerning team members that know that that's how things go, right? And that when they do it back to me, I love them too. So just feel yourself continuing to pull in your tethers. Yeah, and for some of you look like a buoy, like a buoy on the water. And so without the tethers, it feels a little bouncy, right? A little wavy or bouncy. Like, wait, how do I steady myself if I'm not leaning on magic school, or I'm not leaning on my coach or this, high dollar program that I just purchased, And so just see, how could you adjust your system so that you have a wider base, right? So that you're not so tippy. Right? So maybe just imagine if you see yourself as a boat or a buoy that you widen the bottom. There you go. That feels better. Yes. Yes. And then I want you to turn your attention to the very center of your body, right? So your solar plexus. And I want you to just notice as you scan that space for yourself, notice how much energy is moving through it, right? So so first just see, are there any lights on there? Is there any energy activated? Is there a fire? Is there a light? And there may not be, or it may be really low. So just notice. This is our personal power center. It is the place that we that our identity lives. It is the place for me that when I need to turn up my essence, I do it here, because it really is the place of knowing yourself, really being yourself. So just notice what's there. And if the light is not as bright as you would like it, or if there's no light at all, I invite you to construct one, right? So build a fire or bring in a beautiful gemstone. Maybe there's a power switch that you can turn on or a light that you can plug in. Yeah, because this is what happens when we throw out our grappling hooks. We shut the center down because it's like, oh, well, we don't need to be, fighting with this thing that's going to save us. Like, let's put all of our hope there. It's what I did with my 2 first teachers, right? Turn the volume knob down on me, all my eggs in their basket. And then I'm, pissed and wondering at the end why they were such a disappointment. There was no other way that could pan out. Because it's not true. It's not in alignment. There is no way they can save me. They aren't me, right? And by the way, no one needs saving. Isn't that great? So all this energy we put into saving ourselves or having someone else save us, even the idea of needing saved is an illusion. I posted on my Facebook page today this really funny cartoon, or it's something from Zach Galifianakis, I think. And he said, it was like a conversation with him and Santa. So he says to Santa, what I'd like this year is a dragon. And Santa says, can you be more realistic? And Zach says, okay, I'd like to have my life together. And Santa says, okay, what color dragon do you want? And it's this idea that, somehow we have to be together and it would take some miracle. So like even all of that is such a story that if we were just more together, we wouldn't need saved, that there is some finish line that we will cross where saving can occur or is done occurring, like all of that. So what we're really replacing that old stuff with. And you can just move that out. So if you feel that gunk in your solar plexus, just go ahead and start cleaning that out for yourself. Imagine you have a grounding receptacle there and you can kind of just scoop it out. Maybe you can hook up a hose to some golden energy and just like start power washing it. Yeah, we see it all over. We're fed it constantly. Every time you look at your news feed, there's somebody selling you something that you need in order to be okay, We see it on every talk show. It's on every magazine. So we certainly have plenty of evidence around it that we've internalized unknowingly and knowingly. So just move all of that. Good. And so from there, play with turning the volume knob up on yourself. Turn the volume knob up on this energy that's right in the center of you. And those of you in magic school who did this with me this morning, see if you can find a new level of it here. Where else can you expand? What else could you let go so that you could be more and more full of you? Yeah, and so I'm going to let you keep playing with that while I just speak another energetic into your system. An example of how this works, right? Because the fear is, as I become more of myself, I won't need anyone, right? Then I'll be out of relationship, or I will be alone, or I'll be out of my tribe. And here's an example of how it actually shifts everything. So when I was in the energy class with my quote guru, and here's a distinction too. In my experience, people tend to give their power away the most to gurus, and most gurus require it, right? There's a lot of ego in guru. That charisma becomes addictive to them and to people following, and their ego gets fed by the power that people hand them. So that's a pretty dangerous dynamic. Even like gurus in India and all of that, there's a lot of energy that feels out of alignment to that with me. yeah, so back to, when I had all my power and him, he was largely teaching us to read energy by seeing, and so I was doing my best to like follow along and do the whole thing. And it was only after I left that and had navigated my own clearing of it and decided not to forsake all of that learning, just because it had some tainting at the end, but actually to internalize it and make it my own, right? That I started tapping into actually my innate ability is first and foremost feeling, right? So empathy is the main way that I read energy. So I feel what you're feeling. I actually feel it in my body. My second way of knowing and healing and reading energy is by knowing, where I have like a download of information. So as someone's speaking, I just get like a whole package of download, right? We didn't practice any of that in there. So if I stayed in that realm of just doing what I was told, I would have missed the two main ways that are my own gifts, right? And so what happened when I tuned into myself and started making those gifts my own, I was able to take what I learned from him, which was seeing energy as a starting point, and I still do that today. So the way that I start to read energy is I see it. I see like the beginning of something, the beginning of some kind of an image, and then I try it on feeling-wise, and then I get the download of information. Do you see what I mean? So you have to put yourself in it in order to make the tools that you're getting really sing, So it's not about not taking classes. It's not about having to do it all by yourself. It's about not losing sight of the compass that you are activating right here, right now. And it's about from this space, you're able to choose to align yourself with mentors. In my opinion, I think mentors are the next wave of clear energy. I think coaches are a little on the way out because it's pretty old paradigm. It is very surface. It's and I've been calling myself a coach for years, so this is not, again, I don't have a judgment. I'm just naming what I see in the energetic. But I feel like mentors, to me, feels more new paradigm. It's definitely more feminine, where I'm on the same path as you. I'm not better than you. I just happen to have taken these few steps before you took these few steps. So I can tell you what those steps look like for me, which is exactly what we're doing here, right? So in my experience, you can choose the best mentor from this place when you are fully certain who you are and what you are. And I had a beautiful example of that with a woman who joined us in magic school yesterday who she came in and said, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I'm looking for in a mentor. I'd like them to be able to do this, this, and this for me. And it was so beautiful because it was very clear for both of us that I am those things. I can do the things that she is requesting. And but she was in the driver's seat of that. It wasn't me convincing her that I could do something for her. It was, her feeling that for herself and then us feeling the resonance together, which was so beautiful. And it actually really activated something in me. I was like, oh, I want that experience. Instead of walking around saying there are no mentors for me and no one can meet me and I'm the most powerful and knowing and blah, 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 right? Hello, ego. What I can now do is say, okay, I would love the experience of meeting someone and saying, here's how I would like to be mentored. And this is the type of thing that I would want to experience and to learn, and have the mentor say, you've come to the right place. Those are all things that I can do with you. The second piece to know or to keep track of as you're feeling into your mentor is every good mentor has to be doing their work, right? They have to be clearing their stuff, because even the best of us, when you get a lot of energy coming at you and you get a lot of people putting their power toward you, right, throwing out their anchors, somebody who's not doing their work will take that on. They'll start to buy the hype. They'll start to believe that you need them. They'll start to believe that they know more than you. And so they have to be doing their own inner work, like getting coached, calling themselves on their stuff, showing up actually authentically, vulnerably. In my experience, those are the only things that actually really work. And it's not easy, so you think that it will be, and then you start to have some people following you and you're like, like it becomes harder. So look for that in a mentor. And then the third piece that feels really vital to me is a mentor who has a basic understanding that all of the powers and answers are in you. And one of my pet peeves is, psychics and healers who, read energy and use it to tell people how things will be or what they should do. Because there's so much built into that of people giving their power away. So they go to their personal oracle, right? And instead of figuring out what they need to do for themselves or where their own energy is out of alignment, someone reads the current energy and says like, oh, I don't see you ever having children, or I don't see you, you're not going to get married. And then they're like, the psychic said I'm not getting married. So, what's my point, right? The more empowering thing is to hold a mirror up. Like, what is the essence of that? What's even the essence of the question? What is it that you're desiring, and what's disconnected from you having the experience of that desire, right? Whether it be actually getting in a relationship or just being met, in some other way. Do you see what I mean? So it's tempting again. It is tempting to go to psychics and for me, the jury is out. Like, I don't actually go to psychics, and I feel I don't go to psychics who do it that way. Let me just say, like, I don't go to any psychics. I am a psychic, but I don't go to any. And I have friends who have brilliant connections with people that have, year-long waiting lists to get a reading with them. But what it feels like in my system is I don't want someone else's information to trump my own information in my own system. I would rather err on the side of not knowing something than having someone else's knowing of it be more present in my system, So certainly trust yourself to navigate that, and just be checking kind of those energetics as you're engaging with whatever next level of support you're looking for. So then the final thing I just want to say is this is not a game of perfect. Right? So go ahead and just clear that last piece out of your center. This last piece that there's one path for you, and there are these careful stepping stones that you have to discern. And if you step on the wrong one, you will die or drown or, be hopelessly screwed, because it's none of that. Right? So I don't get it right. I'm all the time out of alignment, and here's the thing, when you make friends with that, because then you're the only one you're accountable to. And even then it's like you can just add grace to it. So like, oh yeah, I tried this thing, but still not feeling good in my system. Okay, let me try this a little bit. It's kind of like, gosh, I'm trying to think, what is it like? It's just the most easy, beautiful dance. So if you find yourself in a class that's not in alignment, or you find that, you've hired what you thought was a coach who's now become a guru, and it's like, all my power is given away. You don't have to beat yourself up about it. It's simply like, oh, I've now evolved to a place where I can realize that something needs to shift here. So you might be able to salvage it by just pulling your power back. You might be able to salvage it by, firing up your inner center like we're doing here, so that the rest of your experience with that person has a completely different flavor where you're actually fully in it, So I want you to just internalize that. I'm going to send you the clearest, most firm transition or transmission to add to your center. I just want you to feel this. So it's floating out there, and because it is about personal power, you get to actually choose to receive it. So you can just feel it. You can open up the front of your solar plexus and just allow yourself to feel the vibration of personal certainty, of being called back to your center. Yeah. And then allow yourself to just finalize your system in whatever way feels most comfortable to you right now. So you can turn the volume way up. You can turn it, kind of to a mid-range. We did promise your system at the beginning that if you hated this, you could put the tethers back out. So check that and just see, do I need the tethers? Do I want to put them back out? If you do, you're welcome to do that. No judgments. Beautiful. So good. So as we bring our session to a close, I just really want to thank you for witnessing and for also being in this very curious journey of each of us finding our way of being both teacher and student and flowing through these roles and bumping up against the awkward places as we just orient ourselves and start to remember how we do this thing of evolving and growing and being, all at the same time. So we will continue this discussion over on the tribe. If you're not yet with us, you can join us at facebook.com/groups/Wild Soul Medicine Radio Tribe, Wild Soul Medicine Radio Tribe. And I look forward to continuing to play with all of you. So we'll see you next week. Until then, love. Bye.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. Illumination for God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake.